Chapter 1. No One's Coming. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Briar Hollow screamed. Not the people, not yet anyway, but the sirens, all of them. Every single emergency tower, all up and down Main, the back roads, and the tree line where the deer crossed, bellowing like some mechanical beast, had swallowed the sky. It wasn't a test. You know that kind of thing deep down, even when you're half asleep and tangled in the sweat-damp sheets of a dream you already forgot. June Renner blinked awake, heart banging around like a rat in a shoebox. The sound poured through her bedroom window in waves, rising and falling, low, keening, like something grieving. It got under your skin, behind your eyes. She sat up. The red numbers on her alarm clock blinked nonsense, then died. The power flickered, buzzed once, then out. From the corner of the room came a soft ping, her phone. June grabbed it and squinted. One notification, already half faded. Emergency alert. Please remain indoors. Await further instruction. Then the screen cut to black. Just like that. No bars, no battery symbol, not even the usual blue tint of a dead phone pretending to be alive. She sat there for a second longer than she probably should have, just listening. The sirens rose again, louder this time, like they knew she'd read the message. Then she smelled the air. She didn't mean to. It wasn't like the window was open, but something slipped in, sweet and awful. Like artificial flowers left too long in the sun, like burning plastic, like someone baking a cake inside a tire fire. June threw back the covers and crossed to the window. The fog was thick tonight, amber-colored, like the whole town had been dropped inside a jar of honey and left to ferment. It crawled around the lampposts, pooled in the gutters, and turned the porch lights across the street into sickly halos. She couldn't see the end of the block. And yet, figures, shapes, people. She saw her neighbor Harold stumbling out in his robe, holding a flashlight that barely cut through the haze. Mrs. Danziger stood next to him in slippers, mouthing something June couldn't hear. 3 kids, middle schoolers maybe, stood in the middle of the street looking up like they expected to see a plane crash or the hand of God. No one seemed to know where to look, because there was no source. The sirens weren't blaring from anywhere. They were everywhere. No Doppler effect, no direction, just pure omnipresent sound, like it was stitched into the clouds or their own blood. June opened the window, just a crack. The air hit her like perfume from a corpse, and under that, something else, ozone, like right before a lightning strike, like something charging up. She closed the window. Down on the street, people began shouting. She heard someone yell, "Turn it off!" like that was going to help anything. Another voice was sobbing, slow, low sobs, not panicked, just tired. The sound of someone realizing this wasn't going to be over in 5 minutes. June moved on autopilot, jeans, hoodie, flashlight from the kitchen drawer. She tried the radio. Static. Landline, dead. Even the LED nightlight in the hallway had gone dark. She felt it in her bones, the way you feel a storm before the first drop. This wasn't a warning. This was a goodbye. June walked the half-mile to the school with her hands shoved deep into her hoodie pockets and her flashlight beam bobbing ahead like a nervous thought. The amber fog had thinned, but the smell stuck around, sweet and sour like melted vinyl and funeral lilies. It clung to her hair, to her teeth, to the dark behind her eyes. The sirens were still going, but fainter now. Not off, just farther, as if someone had picked them up and started walking them out into the woods. It made her scalp itch, made the whole world feel tilted, like she'd stepped off the curb and the street never stopped falling. The school sat on a rise near the edge of Briar Hollow, wrapped in a chain-link fence and shadows. It was the town's designated emergency shelter, according to the pamphlets they passed out after the chemical spill over in Grover Hill 2 years back. In the event of a hazardous material alert, report to your designated evacuation hub, the flyer had said. June still had hers stuck to the fridge with a novelty magnet shaped like a possum in sunglasses. She reached the front gate. It was locked. The side door, locked too. She cupped her hands against the glass and peered inside. Lights were on in the main hallway, dim fluorescents buzzing like flies, but there wasn't a soul in sight. Not a janitor, not a nurse, not a single teacher. No emergency cots, no folding tables, no Red Cross welcome kits. Just silence. She rattled the handle anyway, just to feel like she was doing something. A flicker in her periphery made her turn. Across the parking lot at the far end, a figure moved behind the trees. Just for a second, Not fast, not menacing, just there, watching, and gone. She didn't call out, didn't move either. Eventually she turned and kept walking. The firehouse was only 3 blocks down, red brick. Always smelled like diesel and old coffee. Used to be run by a guy named Benny Dawes, who'd once pulled a baby out of a burning shed and got a thank you card from the governor. That was years ago. Benny retired. The new guys were younger, wore their hair too perfect, spent most of their time polishing the truck and playing cards in the garage bay. The garage door was wide open. Inside, darkness. Not like power-out darkness, deeper than that. Like something was waiting in it. June stepped up to the edge, swept her flashlight across the bay. The fire truck was gone. The suits still hung on the wall, boots lined up like obedient soldiers. One of the helmets sat crooked on its peg, like someone had taken it off in a hurry. In the middle of the floor lay a single glove. She didn't touch it, didn't go in, didn't need to. She cut across the back alley to Main Street. Her footsteps sounded too loud, sharp little cracks on the pavement like something trying to break a spell. That's when she saw the cruiser, Deputy Keller's patrol car. Engine running, headlights on, driver's door wide open, no one inside. She called out, cautious, "Deputy?" No answer, not even an echo. June stepped closer, breath hitching in her throat. The radio was still squawking, an endless loop of garbled static and words buried so deep they might have been prayers. She leaned in, careful not to touch the door. The driver's seat was warm, the coffee in the cup holder was still steaming. There were keys in the ignition, a half-eaten sandwich on the passenger seat, a flashlight clipped to the dash. All of it normal. Except for the absence. She backed away slowly. Didn't run. Running made noise. Running made you pray. The sirens had faded now, but not stopped. It was worse than noise. It was distance. It was the feeling of being left behind. She turned in a slow circle. Streetlights buzzed. Houses sat still. Curtains hung limp in windows. The town looked untouched. No broken glass, no fires, no wreckage. But everything felt wrong. Empty didn't cover it. This wasn't just deserted. It was evacuated. Evacuated without her. June felt it then, deep in her stomach. Everyone who could have helped had already left. Whatever this was, she'd slept through the exit. By morning, the sirens had quieted. Not shut off, just gone quiet, like they'd wandered into the woods and forgotten to come back. June stood on her porch with a cup of instant coffee that tasted like old pennies and floor dust, watching her neighbors try to leave town. There was a line of vehicles stretching down Oak Ridge Road. Minivans, pickups, even Miss Tellman's antique Studebaker, which hadn't moved in 3 years and looked like it didn't want to. People packed coolers, clutched maps, tried their phones for the 5th or 6th or 20th time. Still no signal. Overhead, the clouds hung heavy and still, like God had hit pause. The hollow only had one real way out, Route 18, 2-lane blacktop that wound past Dead Crow Creek and into the next county. It wasn't much, but it was something. The convoy started rolling around 7:30 a.m. By 7:47, the first truck came back. It was a Chevy, maroon, dented, missing one taillight. Used to belong to a guy named Hollis Meeks, a welder with 2 ex-wives and a mean laugh. But the driver's seat was empty. The windshield was cracked top to bottom, spiderwebbed like a boot had kicked it from inside. The truck idled up Main Street like a dog that didn't know where home was anymore, tires crunching softly, engine humming low. When it rolled past June's house, she saw there was mud on the tires. Not from the creek bed or the back roads, though. It was black and oily, almost slick, like crude, and it smelled wrong. No one stopped the truck. No one climbed in. It turned left at the church and coasted downhill, disappearing from view. Nobody said a word. An hour later, a group of kids gathered by the forest edge behind the hardware store. Maybe a dozen of them. Some just sat with their backs against the wall, staring off into space. Others kept checking their phones like something had changed since the last time they looked. One boy, maybe 10 or 11, stood a little apart from the rest. June didn't know his name. He was one of those solemn-eyed boys that never said much, skinny, pale, always had a book in his hands that was probably way too old for him. He watched the trees like they were calling him, and then he walked into them. Not fast, not scared. Like it was a decision he'd been chewing on for hours and finally made peace with. Someone shouted for him to stop, one of the older kids, but he didn't even turn around, just vanished into the tree line like smoke. They waited for 10 minutes, then 15. Then the girl with the blue hair started crying. Nobody ever saw that boy again. Around midday, the air changed. It wasn't temperature exactly. It wasn't smell. It was pressure. The kind you feel before a thunderstorm. The kind that made your ears pop and your molars ache. June was at the general store, trying to find batteries and a working flashlight. The lights kept buzzing overhead like they were trying to talk. Every so often, the overhead speakers would crackle, and you'd hear half a word, containment or termination, before the sound cut out again. That's when Benny McGrath came stumbling in. He was bleeding from the nose, thick and fast. Red on his chin, on his collar, down his shirt front. Looked like a Halloween costume gone wrong. His eyes were wild, popped. Not drunk, not high, just gone. "They took the exits," he rasped. "What are you talking about?" June asked, stepping forward before realizing she had no idea what she'd do if he collapsed. "There's nothing past the bridge," Benny moaned. "The road just stops. You turn around and there's the water tower again. We looped 3 times. Lisa tried the map. It just blinked. Gone. We're not on the map anymore. We're not on the map anymore." He screamed the last part loud enough to rattle the jar of pickled eggs on the counter. Then he dropped like a rock. June stood in the doorway of the store 10 minutes later, holding a bag of dead batteries and a flat flashlight, watching the smoke of a distant barbecue swirl upward into the still yellow sky. But there was no fire, no grill, just the scent of something cooking that shouldn't be cooked. Behind her, the radio whispered, not music, not news, just a rhythmic click, over and over, like a metronome counting down. Something had sealed them in, not with walls, not with fences, but with distance. The road to the old radio tower cut through the hill like a scar, narrow, pitted, and overgrown with switchgrass and blackberry vines. The kind of path you didn't walk unless you had a damn good reason, or maybe just didn't care what you found at the top. June had both. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Not because she was being secretive. Truth was, there wasn't really anyone to tell. The town had hollowed out over the course of a day, like meat sucked clean from a bone. People were still there, technically. You could see them through windows, standing in kitchens or sitting on porches, but they weren't moving much. Not talking. Waiting, maybe. But for what? June had no idea. What she did know was that Briar Hollow's only real radio tower sat on Hollowback Ridge, just a mile north of the elementary school. It hadn't broadcast anything worthwhile since 2009, just canned weather reports and old gospel tapes from a preacher who died the same year. But it was still functional, still powered. The maintenance guy, Curtis Bramble, lived out by the reservoir and came up once a month to swap tapes and smoke weed by the power box, or at least he used to. The gate to the tower was open when she got there. Not unlocked. Open, hanging on one hinge like it had been torn that way. The hill beyond was quiet. Not dead quiet. No town ever really gets that quiet unless it's buried. But wrong quiet. The kind of quiet where your footsteps sound too close. Like they're not echoing. Just following. June climbed the steps 2 at a time, flashlight in one hand, pepper spray in the other. She didn't really believe it'd help, but she felt better with it anyway. It was pink and shaped like a cat, a gag gift from a student 3 years ago. Felt silly now. The door at the top wasn't locked either. She stepped into the shack, which smelled like mildew and old cigarettes, and flicked on the desk lamp. The bulbs sputtered once, then steadied. The main radio unit sat on a metal rack bolted to the wall, all knobs and dials and glowing red eyes, the kind of thing a doomsday prepper would sleep with next to their bed. She turned it on. Static, band after band, FM, AM, shortwave, nothing but snow and hiss, until one hit. It didn't even sound like a broadcast, not really. Just a hiss, followed by a voice, warped, distant, like someone underwater reading off a cue card. "Do not seek assistance. Static. They are not coming. More static. Do not seek assistance." Then it looped. Over and over. June leaned closer, turned the dial a hair in either direction. Nothing. That was it. One message, one frequency, like a whisper in a padded room. She stared at the speaker. For a second, just 1 second, she could swear the hiss between words was breathing. Then she noticed the blood. Just a few drops. Dried. Leading from the console to the floor and down the steps at the far end of the shack. She followed them out, slow and careful, knees stiff from the climb. Her flashlight jittered across the grass and caught on something halfway down the hill. A keyring. Big, industrial, the kind they issued to town employees. A Briar Hollow firehouse fob on one end. 4 keys, all labeled in tiny etched print. She knelt, picked it up. Near it, drag marks in the dirt. 2 shallow grooves like heels, and faint handprints, as if someone had been pulled down the slope. Not carried, dragged, but no boot prints, no tire tracks, just exit and silence. June stood on the ridge another 5 minutes, watching the sun fail to rise behind the clouds. Her breath steamed in the air, not from cold, exactly, just a kind of wetness that had sunk into everything. The trees didn't move. The tower didn't hum. Even the wind felt like it had given up. She listened to the voice on the radio repeat one more time. Do not seek assistance. They are not coming. Do not seek assistance. This wasn't a broadcast. It was a recording. A dead thing on a loop. The mayor's office was in the old courthouse, a brick and column relic from back when towns like Briar Hollow thought they were going to be something bigger than gas stations and bait shops and half-drained churches. Back when people still came to the ribbon cuttings and not just the funerals. June broke in through the side door, using a crowbar she'd taken from the firehouse back bay. It felt heavier than it should have. Either that, or she was just more tired than she knew. Inside, the air was dead, not stale, not sour, just dead. Like whatever had lived here, hope, fear, routine, had gone out the back while no one was looking. She passed empty cubicles, half-drunken cups of coffee, a calendar still stuck on June, not this year, last year, maybe longer. Upstairs, the mayor's door was locked. She didn't knock. The crowbar groaned, the wood splintered, and the door creaked open like it didn't want to let go. The room inside was a mess, not ransacked, just left. Chair knocked over, desk drawers half open. A photo on the floor of Mayor Claypool shaking hands with a man whose face had been scratched out with a pen. The computer was on but frozen, mid-email. She didn't bother reading it. Her eyes were drawn to the red folder on the desk, bright red, glossy, like a tongue after a lollipop. Stamped in block letters, Sector 6, termination ready. June sat down in the big leather chair and opened the folder. The first page was a map, not of Briar Hollow, but of a wider radius. 12 towns, most of them she'd never heard of. Each marked with a number, a little circle, and one word beneath. Silent, silent, silent. And next to Briar Hollow, unresponsive, her stomach dropped. Next came a list of names, dozens of them, each with a date and a time and 2 columns effective or incomplete. She didn't recognize any names until the bottom, where it said, Briar Hollow, Phase 1 conditioning failed, visual stimuli ineffective, siren protocol initiated. She turned the page. Containment guidelines read the header. A series of bullet points followed, each more surreal than the last. Do not engage with lingering civilians post-siren deployment. Maintain broadcast loop for 36 hours. Avoid eye contact with mimetic subjects. Sirens are ceremonial. Farewell, not alert. There is no Phase 2. June stared at that last line for a long time. There is no Phase 2. No trucks, no CDC, no helicopters with bullhorns yelling for people to evacuate, no FEMA tents, no rescue. Just a process, a sequence, a sound, and then nothing. She flipped to the last page. There was a photo paper clipped to it. A satellite image, grainy and gray, showing what looked like Briar Hollow taken from orbit. But the town wasn't right. The shape of it, where the streets should have been, looked cracked. Not physically, but like a pane of glass held too long in the cold. At the bottom, typed neatly, containment integrity remains stable. Subject population displays high resignation index. No anomalous resistance. Proceed with closure. Closure. Like they were just a file to be archived. June stood up too fast, the chair squealing against the floor. Her head spun. She gripped the desk to steady herself. Outside the window, the sun still hadn't moved much. It hung like a paperweight in a nicotine-stained sky. She looked down at the town from up here. The courthouse gave a good view. Main Street, the church, even her own house if you knew where to look. She tried to spot movement. Nothing. No kids on bikes, no old folks on porch swings, no dogs barking, no crows on the power lines, just stillness, just silence, like they were already gone, like the town had been folded up, cataloged and filed away, and now the sirens had stopped because their work was done, not to save anyone, but to mark the end. There were no more sirens, but June still heard them. Not with her ears, exactly. somewhere deeper, like a song she'd known as a child but forgotten the words to, like tinnitus with rhythm. And it was pulling her. She left the courthouse just before noon and walked north, past the edge of Briar Hollow, or past the weathered sign that still read leaving city limits, though no one had come or gone in over a day. Beyond that, the trees. The hollow always had a lot of woods. They wrapped around the town like a bad rumor, thick pine and black walnut, mossy oaks, and too many places for something to hide. Hunters used to say the deer went missing here some years, like they knew something was off and just stayed away. Now the forest looked different. Wrong. June stood at the tree line and squinted into the shade. At first, it was just shadows and trunks and quiet. But then, as she stepped in, she noticed the pattern. The trees were in rows, not just natural rows, military ones, like they'd been planted to order and told not to move. Their bark was too smooth, their branches didn't creak, the wind didn't move through them at all. And the smell was off, not dirt and sap and leaves, but static, the kind that lives in old speakers and empty TVs. She kept walking, didn't know why, didn't have anything better to do. Half a mile in, she found the first shoe, tiny, pink, Velcro straps, worn down to the sole. She paused, looked around, nothing but trees, standing silent like priests at a funeral. 10 steps later, another, then another. A whole trail of them, small sneakers, flip-flops, muddy Crocs, all pointed in the same direction, all different sizes, different brands, no two alike, just scattered there like breadcrumbs, but no footprints. Not even hers. June knelt down and touched one of the shoes. It was warm, like it had just been worn. She stood up, heartbeat ticking faster now, and kept going. The deeper she walked, the more the forest changed. The light dimmed too fast for the time of day. One second it was early afternoon, the next, dusk, but not a normal dusk, not golden or soft. The sky above the canopy pulsed a strange, bruised violet, like a storm trying to be born but forgetting how. And the shadows, they didn't fall right. They didn't stretch, they pooled. Black puddles on the moss. Some moved when she didn't. She tried to look back, couldn't see the path anymore. The trees behind her had closed ranks. She was alone. Almost. The first time she heard it, she thought it was the wind. Soft, uncertain. June? She froze, turned slowly. Nothing there but trunks and silence. She took another step. Then, Junie. Closer this time, behind her but off to the left. It sounded like her brother, Mikey, dead since she was 12, but it wasn't him. Not really. Too slow, too breathy, like someone learning how to use a mouth. She didn't answer, didn't run, just kept walking. The voice came again, 20 feet ahead now, buried in the trees. Where'd you go, Junebug? Her mother's voice. Dead 20 years. June swallowed hard. The trees weren't rows anymore. They were teeth. Tall and narrow and crowding inward like a jaw tightening. She tried to turn around. The path was gone. The shoes were gone. Now there was just the forest. Still and endless. And the thing that had her voice, because it spoke again, clear this time. No more disguises. Just her own voice, reflected back at her. I found it, it said. Want to see? The sky above her pulsed one final time, then collapsed into night like a curtain dropped too fast. And June ran. Not because she thought it would help, but because standing still felt worse. June found the parts in the maintenance shed behind the post office. An old ham radio, half a spool of coaxial cable, a busted solar battery pack, duct taped together like a junkie's prayer. It shouldn't have worked. Not really, but it did. She dragged it all up to the roof of the general store with a rusted extension ladder and wired it the best she could, fingers shaking, heart thudding like a bad motor. The sky was dim again. Not night, but something close. An endless late-day hush. The kind of light that felt like the world was holding its breath. She flipped the toggle on the radio. The machine buzzed. A flicker of power hummed through the coil. One red LED blinked to life. For now, that was enough. June sat cross-legged beside it, wind tugging at her sleeves, and took a deep breath. She pressed the mic. This is June Renner, Briar Hollow, Kentucky. If anyone hears this, she hesitated. Looked out across the town from a rooftop perch. No smoke, no screams, just stillness, like a snow globe left on a shelf. Briar Hollow is gone, and it started with the sirens. She released the mic. Static, long, blank, empty static. And then she heard her voice, not through the radio, not even through the air. It came from behind her, a half-second delayed. Her own words, played back like a tape recorder underwater. Started with the sirens. June froze. She looked back at the unit. No playback function, no delay. She pressed the mic again. If anyone can hear me, please respond. And this time she heard someone else. Not a voice, exactly, just a breath. A whisper in the static, shaped like words but not quite making them. It crackled through the speaker like the whisper of leaves in a burned-out orchard. She leaned in close and heard it again. You were warned. She recoiled, heart jackknifing in her chest. No, she muttered. No, that's not. No one warned us. No one said anything. She clicked the mic again. Who is this? How do you know my name? The whisper came back, just the tail end now, dissolving. Warned. Nothing else. The signal went dead. The light on the radio blinked once, then went out. She sat there for a while, not crying, not screaming, just sitting. Because there's a moment, one clear moment, where fear folds itself into something else, something flatter, like realization or resignation. And June had reached it. This wasn't a fluke. Wasn't an accident or a gas leak or a rogue government experiment. It was a system. They didn't warn because warning implies rescue, and there was never going to be a rescue. The sirens hadn't called anyone in. They'd told everyone else to stay away. And now Briar Hollow was sealed, containment complete. She climbed back down the ladder with trembling legs and walked into the dark, not because she knew where to go next, but because she had nowhere left to stay. Behind her, the radio sparked once, a single flash, and then silence. She waited until dark to light the flare. Not because it helped, not really, but because darkness felt honest. After everything that had happened, everything that hadn't happened, it seemed polite to carry some kind of light, even if it only reached a few feet in any direction, like a candle at a wake. June struck the flare against the sole of her boot. It hissed, spat, then bloomed in her hand, hot red like a wound, casting jittery shadows across the trees. The woods greeted her like an old friend. Same neat rows, same wrong hush, same absence of birdsong and underbrush, like walking into a memory too clean to be real. She didn't bring food, or water, or a bag. There wasn't anywhere to go, not really. She was just walking, because someone had to. The deeper she went, the quieter it got, not just sound, but feeling. Even the guilt started to fade, the fear, too. Like the trees were slowly drawing it out of her, sucking it from her pores like a sponge. Peaceful in a way, or maybe just numbing. Behind her something stirred, a whisper of leaves, a shift in air. She didn't turn around, but the voice came anyway, soft, familiar. Junebug, her mother's voice, clear as Sunday morning. Don't go in there, baby, please. June kept walking, one foot, then the other. The flare hissed louder, angrier. It's cold in there, her mother said, and I miss you. The words weren't pleading. They were practiced, smooth, rehearsed, like something that had worn her mother's voice thin from use. June gritted her teeth. Come home. She didn't answer, didn't even look back. Because if she did, if she saw what was speaking with her mother's voice, she might stop, and stopping now wasn't an option. Up ahead, the trees opened into a narrow path, just wide enough for a person to pass through without touching either side. Too symmetrical to be natural. Too neat. The flare sputtered. The air grew warmer. Not the warmth of sunlight, there hadn't been sun in hours, but something else. Internal, like heat from a closed mouth. And then the sirens began again. Not loud, not angry, just welcoming. A lullaby of warbled horns and distant echoes, as if the forest itself had decided to hum, like a beacon or a hearth. She paused, only for a second, then kept walking. The flare dimmed in her hand. Her shadow, once long and sharp, grew fuzzy. The trees started to blur around the edges, like they were being erased as she passed. Or maybe she was. Behind her in the dark that now stretched for miles, Briar Hollow stood silent, empty, preserved. No screams, no bodies, just stillness. The kind that comes after something ends but before anyone admits it. Miles away, just outside the edge of town, a new sign stood on the shoulder of Route 18. Clean, official, fresh paint, bolted into the ground sometime in the last hour, though no one saw the workers. It read, Briar Hollow, closed sector, do not enter. No explanation, no fine print, just a warning. And far behind it, through the trees, if you squinted just right, you could maybe make out the last flicker of a red flare, winking out, like the town itself. The road was empty. No headlights coming, none going, just the long ribbon of cracked blacktop and the woods pressing in on both sides like a pair of watching eyes. It was past midnight, but not quite morning. That strange, hollow time of night when the world feels stretched thin, and maybe you start to think too much about where the dark ends and where it doesn't. The driver was a man named Ellis, truck driver by trade, half a thermos of gas station coffee sloshing on the seat beside him, Hank Williams mumbling through the static on the radio. He'd been trying to find a weather report for the past 40 miles, but all he got was fuzz and garbled preachers. Hell with it, he muttered, thumbing the dial again. The needle jumped. Static. Then more static. Then, June Renner, if you hear this. Ellis paused, hand frozen on the knob. The voice was small, a woman's, flat but steady, like someone reading their last words off a crumpled napkin. Briar Hollow is gone, and it started with the sirens. Then silence, just for a beat, long enough for the hairs on Ellis's neck to stand up like iron filings drawn to a magnet. The signal vanished, replaced again by the long hiss of dead air. Ellis blinked. Glanced at the dial, no station number, just blank, as if it hadn't happened. Okay, he said, drawing the word out like it might make sense if he gave it enough time. Okay. He reached for his coffee. That's when the sirens started, not ahead, behind, low and distant like the edge of a dream, but getting closer. His hands went tight on the wheel. What the hell? He checked the mirrors. No lights, no flashing reds, no blue strobes, just the rumpty. The sound grew. A long, rising wail, not quite mechanical, not quite human, like a town mourning itself. And the weirdest part? It wasn't coming from a direction anymore. Not left, not right. It was everywhere. It was inside. The coffee thermos tipped and rolled onto the floor with a clunk, but Ellis didn't reach for it. He couldn't. He just stared ahead at the double yellow lines, the trees, the sudden flicker of movement in the corner of his eye that vanished when he looked. If you hear this, the voice again. Not from the radio, from the speakers, from the glove box, from the goddamn air vents. It started with the sirens. Ellis hit the brakes, hard. The truck fishtailed once, tires squealing, gravel kicking up like sparks. He came to a stop in the middle of the road, turned the key, killed the engine. Silence, no wind, no bugs, no road noise, just the hiss of something waiting to breathe. Then, from far down the road, just at the edge of where the high beams ended, a flicker of red, like a flare, like someone walking away, slow and steady, into the trees. Back in the cab, the radio clicked once more, and a final whisper came through, one word, soft, regretful, run.